The Ridge Cemetery stands silent and still, blanketed by a thick fog on cold autumn nights. But experienced ghost hunters know that the unnatural mist is no ordinary weather phenomenon. Locals speak in hushed whispers about the restless spirits that wander amongst the crumbling headstones, leaving offerings of flowers and trinkets to appease the dead. It's been over a century since the cemetery opened, but no one has forgotten the dark history buried here. Dozens of first-hand accounts tell of phantom figures drifting aimlessly through the rows of graves, only to vanish into thin air when approached. Spine-tingling moans echo around the grounds at night when not a soul is in sight. Those brave enough to enter the decrepit crypts report feeling invisible hands tugging at their clothes, urging them back outside. The most daring visitors have captured phantom voices pleading for help on EVP recordings. Some say the cemetery is cursed, haunted by souls unable to move on to the next world. Others believe a demonic presence dwells here, feeding off the pain and suffering of the dead. But one thing remains certain. Once you step foot past the wrought iron gates of Ridge Cemetery, you'll never be alone. Something sinister lurks in the shadows, waiting for night to fall. Ridgeview Cemetery was established in 1872 by a group of wealthy families who lived in the growing town of Ridgeview Hills. At the time, there were no public cemeteries in the area, and families had to bury their loved ones on their own land. The founding families, the Briggs, the Thompsons, the Morrisons, and the Crabtrees, pooled their resources to purchase a 25-acre plot of land outside of town that they would develop into a private cemetery for their families. The picturesque hilltop land was optimally located, with panoramic views of the surrounding countryside. The earliest sections of the cemetery were laid out in a neat grid system by headstone magnate J. Morrison Briggs. The founding families each selected family plots in coveted locations throughout the grounds. Initially, only the town's elite families could purchase burial plots in Ridgeview. However, by the late 1890s, the cemetery opened up plots to any families who desired them and expanded into additional acres. Throughout its history, Ridgeview Cemetery has served as the final resting place for many of Ridgeview Hill's founding families and most prominent citizens, with generations buried side by side. The Victorian-era monuments and mausoleums reflect the status and wealth of those interred there. The cemetery landscape continues to evolve today as new sections are developed to accommodate more burials. The old cemetery dates back to the early 1800s and is the final resting place for many famous and influential people from the area. While most gravestones have succumbed to the ravages of time, a few elaborate family mausoleums still stand. One of the most striking is the marble tomb of the wealthy industrialist John Smith. Smith was a prominent businessman in the late 1800s who owned the town's textile mill and several other factories. His imposing tomb stands near the cemetery's entrance, with a statue of an angel on top. The poet Emily Jones also lies in the cemetery. She wrote acclaimed nature poetry in the early 1900s and pushed for conservation efforts. Her simple headstone bears her name and a line from one of her poems. Other notable burials include Mayor Thomas Wilson, Revolutionary War veteran Samuel Adams, and Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell, the first American female doctor. While their graves are unmarked today, records confirm their interment in the cemetery archives. The old stones tell the stories of the town's most important citizens and how they shaped local history. A walk through the cemetery evokes images of the people laid to rest there and the lives they led. Maplewood Cemetery gained a reputation for being haunted in the late 1800s after a series of tragic events and disturbing rumors surrounding the grounds. The earliest ghost stories emerged shortly after the cemetery opened in 1872. At the time, Maplewood was located on the outskirts of town and was prone to vandalism and grave robberies at night. Several bodies were found unearthed, adding to fears that the cemetery was cursed or haunted. Around the turn of the century, a series of mining accidents led to dozens of miners being buried at Maplewood. There were rumors that some had been buried alive, leading to some of the first documented reports of ghosts from both visitors and groundskeepers. They described hearing faint cries and seeing shadowy figures wandering among the graves late at night. One of the most disturbing rumors surrounds a mausoleum built in the early 1900s. The structure was commissioned by a wealthy family, but sat unfinished for years after the stock market crash. According to legend, the bodies stored there were left to decompose, and strange smells would emanate from the crypt. Ever since, people have reported encountering ghostly figures around the mausoleum. Over the decades, stories continued to spread about the paranormal happenings at Maplewood, cementing its status as one of the most haunted cemeteries in the region. Its secluded location and abandoned, overgrown sections only added to its sinister mystique. For locals and ghost hunters alike, solving the mystery of Maplewood's restless spirits became an intriguing challenge. Crybaby Cemetery has long been rumored to be haunted. Over the years, many visitors have reported encountering ghostly apparitions and experiencing other unexplained paranormal phenomena within the ancient burial ground. Some of the eeriest accounts involve sightings of shadowy figures darting behind tombstones and whispers from disembodied voices carried on the wind. People exploring the cemetery at night swear they've seen ghostly orbs floating above graves and felt unseen hands tugging at their clothing. Apparitions dressed in period attire from past centuries have startled visitors walking along the gravel paths. One of the most common paranormal occurrences involves hearing the distant cries of an infant, believed to be the spirit of a child buried long ago. The distressing wails rise up unexpectedly, leaving many to wonder if an anguished mother still searches for her lost baby at the cemetery. Some have captured the crying and other odd sounds on audio recordings and devices that measure changes in electromagnetic fields. Photos and videos have revealed glowing mists and light anomalies that hover near headstones before vanishing. Skeptics dismiss the ghostly tales as mere figments of overactive imaginations. But those who've had their own bizarre experiences at Crybaby Cemetery are convinced the burial ground is a paranormal hotspot harboring restless spirits from the past. The cemetery has its fair share of ghost stories and legends that have developed over the years. Here are some of the most well-known spirits said to haunt the grounds. The Lady in White is perhaps the most famous ghost of the cemetery. She is said to be the spirit of a young woman who died suddenly on her wedding day in the late 1800s. Numerous visitors have reported seeing her ghostly figure floating near her grave, dressed in a flowing white wedding gown. Some say she asks passers-by for help finding her lost wedding ring. The groundskeeper is a ghost who has been spotted by many visitors and staff over the decades. He is believed to be the spirit of a former cemetery caretaker from the early 1900s who dedicated his life to the upkeep of the land. His ghost is often seen dutifully continuing his work by raking leaves and tending to graves. The weeping child is one of the more unsettling ghosts of the cemetery. The sounds of a young child crying can sometimes be heard near the section of infant graves. The child is thought to be the spirit of a girl who died in the late 1800s at age 6 from illness. Visitors have reported not just hearing her cries, but fleeting glimpses of her ghostly figure weeping over the graves. While not all ghost sightings can be confirmed, these chilling legends continue to add to the haunted mystique of the cemetery, intriguing both seasoned ghost hunters and casual visitors alike. The stories ensure the deceased buried here will not be forgotten. The cemetery is open daily from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and is free to visit. It's a popular spot for history buffs, ghost hunters, and those looking to pay respects to deceased loved ones. When visiting, be respectful of other guests and gravestones. Photography and videography are allowed. Some areas may be unsafe due to crumbling infrastructure, so use caution around crypts and mausoleums. Sturdy shoes are recommended for walking on the cemetery's gravel paths. Visiting in a group is best if you plan to explore the older sections. While paranormal occurrences are unlikely, having others around can offer peace of mind. Avoid going near the cemetery at night, as it closes at 5 and trespassing after hours is prohibited. During your visit, take time to appreciate the cemetery's natural scenery. Mature trees, local wildlife, and flowering plants create a tranquil setting. Just be aware of your surroundings, stick to designated paths, and do not disturb any grave sites. If hoping to spot alleged paranormal activity, the most active areas are near the lake and cemetery chapel. However, respect those coming to mourn loved ones and avoid crowding popular spots. With an open mind and polite attitude, your daytime visit to the historic cemetery can be an educational and insightful experience. Without a doubt, one of the most popular ways to experience the ghosts and supernatural legends of the haunted cemetery is by joining a ghost hunt tour. These thrilling nighttime excursions are led by experienced paranormal investigators who share the cemetery's spooky history and guide participants to the most active areas to encounter paranormal phenomena. The ghost hunts typically begin after dark, when the cemetery gates are locked and everyone else has gone home. This ensures privacy and zero disruptions during the peak paranormal hours. Groups are kept small, usually less than 20 people, to facilitate monitoring equipment like EMF meters, digital recorders for EVP sessions, and infrared cameras to capture orbs and mists. Everyone gets a chance to use the ghost hunting gear while the guide explains what to look and listen for. As the tour moves through the cemetery, the guide recounts the eerie tales attached to certain graves and mausoleums, which are said to be supernatural hotspots. Sometimes phantom voices or unexplained noises are captured in real time. At the end, footage and audio recordings are reviewed. Participants often come away with chilling photographic evidence or even a personal ghostly encounter to share. For anyone hoping to commune with the dead and experience paranormal activity firsthand, the ghost hunt tours are an absolute must. Just be warned, once the spirits make contact, you may never view cemeteries in the same way again. The history of ghost sightings and supernatural occurrences at the old cemetery has attracted serious interest from paranormal investigators over the years. Teams of researchers have conducted scientific investigations at the location using specialized equipment in hopes of capturing definitive proof of paranormal activity. Some of the technical tools and methodologies utilized during these investigations have included thermal imaging cameras, electromagnetic field meters, EMF meters, digital voice recorders, night vision cameras, and more. Thermal cameras can detect fluctuations in temperature which may signify a ghostly presence. EMF meters track changes in electromagnetic fields, as ghosts are theorized to emit their own electromagnetic energy. Voice recorders try to pick up electronic voice phenomena, EVP, strange voices or sounds that only become audible during playback. The teams meticulously survey the cemetery grounds and known hotspots for unexplained activity. They monitor their equipment overnight in attempts to document visual, auditory, or electromagnetic evidence under controlled conditions. Any notable readings or recordings are analyzed in depth to try ruling out natural explanations. While many investigations have yielded intriguing results, a definitive paranormal discovery remains elusive. The tools have limitations, and findings are often open to interpretation. Some paranormal researchers have also conducted psychic or medium sessions during their investigations, claiming to communicate with resident spirits. Overall, the continued interest from paranormal groups indicates the cemetery maintains a mystique for potentially harboring ghosts and supernatural phenomena. Serious research efforts continue in hopes of someday proving its haunted status through scientific evidence. After delving into the long and storied history of this cemetery, it's clear why it has developed such an infamous reputation for paranormal activity over the years. From its tumultuous early days with disease outbreaks and questionable burial practices, to the many ghostly legends and encounters reported within its gates. This hallowed ground seems to be host to unrested spirits of the past. While the evidence for ghosts and hauntings relies heavily on eyewitness accounts and anecdotal stories passed down through generations, the sheer volume of reports gives credence to the idea that something out of the ordinary occurs here. Between the eerie sensations visitors describe, unexplained anomalies capture it in photos and videos, and the many tragic tales of souls buried here, this cemetery continues to be shrouded in mystery and intrigue. For those brave enough to enter the cemetery gates after dark, the opportunity for spectral encounters certainly exists based on decades of accumulated ghost lore. However, even skeptics may feel an uneasy chill within the rows of weathered tombstones, as the weight of history in this space is undeniable. Whether you believe in lingering spirits or not, the haunted cemetery remains an evocative landmark intertwined with legend, tragedy, and the unknown. Our journey into its past reveals a layered narrative of both human life and the possibility of death's mysteries.